Wishing for his son Wulf, Luke Pasqualino, to be wed with Hera, Gaia Wise, led to altercations between Freca and King Helm, Brian Cox. Helm accidentally kills Freca, Sean Dooley, with one strong blow and is given the nickname Helm Hammerhand. Years later, Wulf returns seeking revenge and a throne. When I heard Peter Jackson was returning to Middle Earth for this movie, I was excited. That excitement quickly faded when it was said that the movie's animation will be that of anime. I particularly don't like this format, and so I began losing interest. I figured I was being too harsh and decided to give this movie a try, in the hopes that the story would suffice. Sadly, I feel the story was just a derivative of what was already depicted in both The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, just at a smaller scale. Let's begin. The movie opens up with some nice animations of mountains as Eowyn, Miranda Otto, narrates to us some exposition. Hera takes a horse ride to a high place and throws a huge piece of meat into the air for a fetchling eagle to catch. Men of the West March arrive in the hopes to unite both regions through marriage. Freka hopes to have his son Wulf marry Hera since he heard her hand will be given to one from Gondor, but is denied by Helm. Things escalate quickly and end when Helm kills Freka with one sweeping blow, gaining the nickname Helm Hammerhand. These altercations should have ended with Freka's death, but Wulf swears to enact revenge for what had happened. In response, Helm banishes him and all his Dunglangdings. So far, the story provides some necessary information in regards to world building, with some slight characterizations. Personally, I didn't like this character trait of being against marriage as it was portrayed. You can want adventure and fight for your place, all while being married, right? Hera says she's against marriage, with no real explanation as to why. Perhaps she doesn't want to go to a strange land with a stranger, where she would much rather stay with her people in Rohan or Edoras. It could have also been some fear she has about being married. That would make sense, but the movie didn't give a chance to explain this or provide any further details.
I have no thoughts of marriage at all. I do not want to marry you. I do not want to marry any man.
I just found it disappointing when the movie was extremely vague about a character trait that seemed very important to her character, much like what the movie does with shield maidens. During these scenes, we do get some level of setup with the mentions of shield maidens. Apart from feeling a bit too forced in this scene, I feel the whole aspect of shield maidens wasn't explored to its full potential. The movie revolves around this notion, yet executes it poorly. Not only did I get a small indication that Hera is the shield maiden, or at the very least wants to be, I was unsure whether or not she did become one at the end. But for now, let's put a pin on this and return to this in just a bit. Seasons passed and a new threat rose on the eastern borders of Rohan. Checking it out, they encounter a rabid Oliphant, or Mumak. Hera would then trick this Oliphant into its doom by luring him into the nearby forest, where it is eaten by a Watcher. Unfortunately, General Targ, Michael Wildman, kidnapped Hera, taking her to the High Lord of the Hill Tribe. Locating Hera, Freylof, Lawrence Umbog, Olwyn, Lorraine Ashburn, and Leaf, Bilal Hasna, think of a plan to rescue her. From here, the character of Olwyn didn't sit well with me. She somehow snuck through guards and soldiers and rescued Hera with a small shield. Yes, Olwyn is revealed to be a shield maiden, which does explain her skills, not only here and later on. I'd only imagine her age would play a part in it as well, like not being able to do certain things she used to in her youth. However, her efforts proved worthy as she manages to get Hera home. I get Olwyn as a shield maiden, but come on, this scene just felt too unrealistic. Not only that, but here on after, she begins calling shots and taking initiative. Don't get me wrong, I don't take issue with the fact that she, being a woman, is taking charge. No. Where I have issue is how everyone doesn't question it and listens and obeys. Yes, shield maidens were respected and were held to a high standard back in the day, but according to the movie, it seemed like there was none left.
When all the men were slain, they took up arms and fought. They defended Rohan when no one else could.
Those were darker days. I doubt there are any of them left.
They're all gone.
Not all of them.
So wouldn't they be shocked that Olwen was a shield maiden? Someone who they probably know for such a long time, therefore hidden in plain sight? At the very least, have a scene or two where someone acknowledges it and allows her to call the shots. Because in Hornburg, I'm almost certain there should have been a captain or a general giving orders to these soldiers. But that was unfortunately lacking in this story. Instead, Olwen takes charge and commands these soldiers, who, at the time, only knew her as a maid to Hera.
Close the gate! Close the gate!
Also the custom to tell your lady's maid if you're going to run off and make...
Sure, she is a shield maiden, but I'm not sure that outranks a general. A small detail, but one that kind of irked me. Helm is angered by Hera's kidnapping and exiles Freylof. And by now, I'm pretty sure you've seen and noticed a couple similarities to this movie's predecessors. Freylof understands that and takes his leave. However, with Wulf coming back into play, war is imminent, and Hera pledges her sword but is denied by Helm, who urges her to go to Gondor so that she may live. In the meantime, everyone prepares for battle. Hama, Yazdan Quafori, apologies if I butchered that, entrusts his instrument to Hera. And well, I'd rather not talk about what Hera did afterwards, so I'll just leave it at that.
Keep this safe for me.
Always.
But, my lady, that was Master Harmer's.
And what use is it without him?
As Hera observes the war, Olwen hands her a sword and tells her that the same blood flows in her. It would just be nice to have seen at least small portions where this indication was true. We do see a small desire, but no actions being taken. We know she wants to fight, but we don't really see her do anything about it. For example, we see that she has a fascination with eagles, but we never really understood why. It's only there to provide the little tidbits of information for the audience to understand this would play a part later on in the story, without showing us its importance, not only to the story, but to the character. And this happens with the majority of elements of the movie, most of which coincide with who Hera is as a character. For example, why she doesn't want to marry, why she wants to fight, her longing to explore or be out there, etc., etc. To get my point across, Eowyn faced a similar situation, but she did not stand idle. She went into battle, taking Mary and proving themselves in the end. In this scenario, Hera wants to fight, but she kind of remains afar. Sure, she does take actions here and there, like the Oliphant and in Edoras. I just felt that it wasn't done very well. It was executed to a smaller scale than it could have. Let's take what happens in Edoras as an example. Lord Thorn, Jude Akubudike, apologies if I butchered that, means to betray Helm, something Hera discovered during her stay on Northanc and put together in this scene. So, she evacuates Edoras while the men fight on the battlefield. Why Thorn means to betray Helm is unclear nor explored. It just sort of happens. But what she does is appoint Olwen to lead the march towards Hornburg, while she stays and tries to defend Edoras. Unfortunately, and it does kind of make sense, Edoras is lost. She does fight Lord Thorn and ends up killing him. But unfortunately, at that point, I felt like the scene could have played out way better. Not only in demonstrating her character, but in at least having some significance. To my recollection, there was no real significance in Thorn's betrayal. I don't recall if it mentions him getting anything or his motivations in doing so. But in the end, his betrayal served no purpose. With Edoras lost, they evacuate to Hornburg. Wounded and heartbroken by Halel's Benjamin Winwright's death, Helm Hammerhand offers his life in exchange for Hama's. But Wulf crosses the line of no return and slays Hama in front of everyone. While this scene was very impactful and adds onto both character and stakes to the situation, all I could think about was, why didn't archers try to kill Wulf right then and there? Sure, Hama was in line of fire, but afterwards? I don't really know. You can clearly see that archers were there at the wall.
Let them.
Wulf returns to Edoras and puts on a crown, ordering Targ to summon the lords of Rohan so that they will bow down to him. Unfortunately, this goes nowhere and basically doesn't do much, but only shows us a king of nothing. It does hold a pretty impactful image, but feels so out of place because the previous scene, Wulf was in Hornburg. The next scene, he's in Edoras, wearing a crown. The reason it doesn't make any sense, not only structurally, but because, like I've already mentioned, it goes nowhere. I will admit that I do like Wulf's interactions and his dialogue in this scene. What happens next, it left me with mixed reviews, and I still do not know how I feel about it. Helm Hammerhand disappears and begins taking down Wulf's army one at a time. His actions spark fear onto the battlefield and these soldiers, making people believe he is some sort of wraith enacting revenge. This turns out to be false. He is better and has a change of hearts, sure, but it does not explain his ability to combat the cold, to fight with just his fists, to jump this high, or a lot of the stuff that he's depicted to do. After defeating 2 orcs and their beast with just his fists, he tells Hera how he didn't see how she was brave, clever, and stronger than he knew. And again, this sets of dialogue would be better if there was any scenes backing this up. We do get some small glimpses of this being true. I just felt it wasn't constructed and executed very well for this to be true. What would have been great would be how, even when denied, she still does things, obviously behind the king's back, which are beneficial. Unfortunately, the king doesn't notice and only notices afterwards. The sounds of the beast echoes through the land, attracting Wulf. Now caught, Helm and Hera run towards the gate as their tunnel was blocked during the fight. Not being able to open the gates due to the cold temperature, Helm pushes Hera inside in the little crevice, locking himself outside, taking down Wulf's army as the cold sets in. Next thing you know, Helm Hammerhand is frozen with his hammer somehow in his hand. How it got there, I don't know. How Wulf didn't suffer the same fate, given he was also shown outside, I don't know. How the people of Edoras managed to bring him in after not being able to open the door wide enough earlier, or without Wulf trying to get inside or at some of his soldiers, I don't know. Point is, being surrounded, losing resources, and with nothing to do, Hera asks help from the Eagles. They oblige and take Helm's armor to Freyalaf. He puts on the armor and sparks fear onto these men when he and his men arrive. As everyone flees, Hera challenges Wulf in a battle. and due to his hubris, Wulf accepts and is defeated. As the story concludes, tying in with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I had no idea how I felt about this movie. On the one hand, it's part of the universe I love, and on the other, it didn't provide much enthusiasm as I watched. Not only because it was an anime, but because it didn't feel like I'm watching a new movie. Mostly everything that was in this movie already happened, and while chronologically speaking, technically this happens first, you knew that I wasn't referring to that, right? Some of the similarities are as follows. You have a woman wanting to fight, but is denied time and time again. You have someone who is loyal to the king, who is exiled or banished, only to return in Hornburg or Helm's Deep. Obviously, you have the Hornburg and Helm's Deep. You have a battle with Oliphants. Granted, in War of the Rohirrim, it was in Edoras, while as in The Return of the King, it was in front of Gondor. But my point still stands. All of these similarities are basically in the original trilogy, that nothing sparked my curiosity when watching War of the Rohirrim. I think the reason I have this problem is because in the original trilogy, part of the thing that brings a lot of serotonin while I'm watching these movies is the epic proportions of the battle, the war, and the stakes that it all had. But in War of the Rohirrim, it felt like the animators were lazy. There was supposed to be this great battle in front of Edoras, but there was only like 4 small groups of soldiers fighting. That in the end, it felt lackluster. I'm supposed to see this and think it's a great battle, or it provides any great stakes, when there was practically no war. It was just a major letdown. Not even the characters. Because, like I mentioned, the movie has a big emphasis on 2 things: Hera's disapproval in marriage and shield maidens. Both of which are part of her character trait. However, I felt that both of these aspects were not properly explored well. I've already shared my sentiments with Hera's disapproval of marriage. I would have just liked for it to have been there, for there to be more emphasis in this matter, an importance for being mentioned, because you cannot provide bits of information without there being a reason for that information to be there. Every scene, every dialogue spoken, every shot, every action in a movie and story or script matters. So when there's something, a key detail, a close up of an item that has no importance to the story, it feels like that close up, that mention, that scene doesn't matter. And even if it's supposed to matter, it ultimately fails because there feels like there's no significance to it. So don't make that mistake. As for the Shield Maidens, I also felt it was lacking something. If only there was a stronger emphasis on people's reactions to the Shield Maidens, whether or not they agree or disagree with Shield Maidens, or appreciate their efforts they once did, because honestly, the fact that the Shield Maidens exist is a huge deal to Rohan's history. When the movie is supposed to indicate that there is a strong emphasis on Shield Maidens, but technically have nothing to do about it, except Olwen being one of them, is disappointing. Especially if Hera does become one at the end. Overall, War of the Rohirrim was just a shorter and less epic version of events that we've already seen. Being an anime, I can't fully be invested in the story. While I don't particularly like anime, that doesn't make this movie bad, and that's not what I'm referring to. But I brushed this aside and focused more on story. And unfortunately, the story wasn't that great, given what I've already mentioned about similarities. The story lacking because of importance not being emphasized, and because characters felt more two dimensional. While this may be canon to the trilogy, I don't think it's a movie I can binge or watch as consecutively as I can the original trilogy. But anyways, those are just my thoughts. Did you enjoy the movie? Let me know what you thought about it down below, and I'll see you in the next review. Until then, God bless.